Kroger brand products have the great taste you'll celebrate. That's why over 40 million people choose Kroger brand products, making them a true crowd pleaser. And with quality guaranteed, you'll love your choice or get your money back. Score Kroger brand products with savings you can cheer for and great taste you can't resist. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
This is Hidden Killers Week in Review.
A look back at the most prolific stories of the week.
Welcome to the podcast. If you'd like to listen to an ad-free version of this episode and all of our episodes, then search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. That's our premium channel where all of our ad-free and advanced episodes live, all in one place. True Crime Today Premium Plus. Search it on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. Even try it for 3 days free.
Some secrets are kept in the basement, others in the morgue. Welcome to Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski, featuring defense attorney and host of the podcast, Defense Diaries, Bob Motta.
The New Orleans terrorist attack and the attack that appears to be somewhat connected at the very least in Las Vegas at the Trump International Hotel is what we're talking about right now. There's a lot of questions still as of the point of this recording. So take it for that. We're going to talk about things that we know at this level right now. Bob Motta, defense attorney, joining me to discuss. I guess my first question, Bob, as a defense attorney, excuse me, both of these, the suspects, the ones who did this or, physically executed it, are dead. Obviously, they are still looking for other connections, other people who may have been involved in this. Where are we looking at this legally? I mean, where does this go from here when you have the two main people that were there deceased?
From the criminal side of it, short of them finding some kind of conspiracy or co-conspirators, there's nothing. Like you obviously can't charge dead people.
Yeah.
If they're able to, through their investigation, determine that other people were involved, that there were multiple actors, then obviously that changes things in terms of them being able to charge somebody and convict somebody of the crimes, or at least try to convict somebody of the crime. So, that's always one of these things in these cases where either like in school shootings where, the shooter is killed by law enforcement or they take their own lives. You're not getting that justice that we like to talk about because there's no one to serve justice upon.
Yeah.
You can't serve justice upon somebody who's deceased. You can't bring a criminal case for the principle of the thing. So, short of them digging up some kind of connections with other individuals that were involved in planning, not necessarily the commission, but the planning of it or helping secure materials, things of that nature. At that point, then they'd have somebody to look at in terms of criminal charges. On the civil side of it, however, but you could sue, right? You can sue for damages if you're the victim's families, but the first thing they teach you in law school when you take torts class, which is kind of the personal injury realm, you don't sue anybody that doesn't have any money.
Exactly. And what we're looking at here in these two cases, it does not appear that on the surface anyway, that there is anything to civilly sue for other than principle. But why, why put yourself through it, for something like that?
Yeah. And you're just going to be hard pressed to find any civil attorneys that are willing to take the case if there's no back end money, because usually civil attorneys are taking cases like that on what they call contingency, meaning, okay, well, you don't have to pay us up front. We'll get our money when we collect at the end. But that process includes the attorneys really evaluating the strength of the claim and collectability of the judgment, because that's ultimately what matters in civil cases. Is it's one thing, you can go get a $10 million judgment, but if the defendant doesn't have a pot to piss in, you're never collecting it. So what's the point?
Yeah.
All you have there is a piece of paper with a judgment and it's got no value. So, sadly, there's a likelihood that this thing kind of like dies with the perpetrators. You know, I mean, obviously there's a lot more to talk about with it in terms of motivations and ramifications of what happened. You know, but I mean, I'm sure we're going to chat about that next.
There's a lot to come. And whenever you're listening to this, whenever you're viewing this, there will certainly be more developments. There's a bit of a delay between us recording and then it comes out. But as of right now, I want to talk about the similarities between the two attacks. The one that was done at the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, and also obviously New Orleans. And the similarities that we have between the two, we're trying to figure out, is there a connection here? Well, they were both in the U.S. Army and both stationed at Fort Bragg for an overlapping period of time. That's the only time we can physically, on a timeline, kind of overlap a thing. These are huge bases, so everybody has to put that into mind. If you've never been on a base, it's a city, basically. So to say, oh, this person knows that person, that's not necessarily how that works. That, and they got the car from their vehicles from the Toro app. Beyond that, I mean, what's your thoughts here? Is there a connection? Obviously there's no coincidences, sometimes. And we have two coincidences already in this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're adding the timing of it to it, we have three.
You're right.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's like, because obviously these two things occur within, 12 hours of one another, or even a little less than that. And you've got the first thought, is this like a coordinated attack? Much like we had with 9/11, where we had multiple targets that were getting hit. So that's the first thing that pops in your mind when you start kind of digging into these two individuals. The challenge for the feds will be to figure out if they were in communication. So obviously at this point, the feds have conducted searches and raided wherever they were living, to get all their devices. If they were in communication, the likelihood is that they were probably using burner phones, paid phones, so that they weren't on the grid, so to speak. But there's always chat rooms. There's always, the interwebs, from their computer devices to see if there was some kind of communication going on. I mean, that's the thing that they're going to be looking for. And really at this point, they're trying to derive a couple of things. One, they're really trying to derive what was the motivation, what was the motive of this, what was the message. Is it something that there's a larger group out there that is of a mindset, whether it be political, whether it be religious, whether it be a combination of both, what caused these people to do this? The timing of it obviously being New Year's Day, it's just like, there's a lot of, we're pretty close to the inauguration of our new president, our former president. There's a lot of factors involved. We have everything that's going on in the Middle East with Palestine and Israel. We've got what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. There's just so much stuff going on. I think there's going to be a real interest from the feds to figure out what was motivating these guys and if they're part of a bigger group, so. And
that's a question I have. I think one of the big questions here in this case is, are they part of a bigger group? And again, I got to preface this: when you're watching this or listening to this, we may have more answers than we have as of this conversation. But as of right now, we don't really know. But the fact that these were not extremely impressive attacks. It seems like it was a massive failure in security in New Orleans, and that's on the city for that. But beyond that, it's not. If the allowance is there for a vehicle to get onto a crowded street in probably the number 2 city in the United States for a terrorist attack at that moment, and they thought a squad car was going to fix it, I think there's a lot of questions to be had there if there's anything on the inside. I hope to God there's not. But I think that should be looked at, or it could just be incompetence. But the fact that this was allowed to happen the way it was, there's so many questions that arise from that as to how did this occur? Is this ignorance? Obviously there's crazy people out there. They're going to try and do these things. Why was it insane to put they did not put like concrete barriers up? It's basic things that could have prevented this sort of thing. That to me is another huge question to what the hell's going on in this case.
Yeah. The Trump hotel thing.
Yeah.
That was just, it's random. I mean, we can't live.
I understand the Trump hotel thing. I'm talking about New Orleans. I mean, literally, Bob, I picked up an Uber in that exact spot about when was I in Vegas? It was like 10 months ago, around there.
Yeah.
And we were at the mall across the street, picked up an Uber, and it directed us directly underneath there. We were standing in that exact spot, and it's just spooky to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it makes you think timing is everything, right?
Yeah. Oh, completely.
Wrong place, wrong time.
Completely.
It's so true, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you're right. I mean, in terms of both of the attacks, they were pretty amateurish. It's like I've read about some folks that are familiar with the perpetrator in the New Orleans attack, talking about like this guy, like actually with both of them, like that both of them were pretty skilled from their army career in terms of like the level of what was done and the level of what could have been done just don't seem to kind of jive with some of the people that seem to know these people. Because I mean, essentially what you have is a guy driving around a barricade. But we've seen footage that he was walking on Bourbon prior to, it looked like he left like a cooler filled with maybe explosives. So he had done some pre-planning and, but your larger point, which is a really interesting question because, like shy of New York, in like Times Square, I can't think of an area anywhere in this country that consistently has more people on the streets walking around than those two locations. And, I mean, I guess the question becomes, do we let the terrorists win? Do we move into this phase of where we've got to lock every single thing that we're doing down?
But I don't think we do. One of my biggest questions on this whole thing is who was in charge of this security and how old are they? And I'm very curious about that because if they were not in a mindset to comprehend and understand 9/11 and the immediate aftermath of 9/11 and how security was run. I mean, we went into fairly strict lockdowns on things, but it did ease up, but it eased up to a level that seemed to be secure. I think, and I think there's many generations now that never even saw that or understand it, and you can't comprehend it if you didn't live it. It's the same way our generation doesn't understand Pearl Harbor the way that someone who went through it. But it's one of those things where I think if you missed that part of history, which is now 25 years ago, a quarter of a century ago, you may not quite grasp the gravity of what people who have some hell-bent idea on destroying people, what they'll go to. And this didn't seem like it was that much of rocket science to put an extra barrier up so a vehicle could not fit through an open road there. That to me just seems very questionable. And New Orleans clearly has a history of incompetence in terms of their city and how they handle it. Is this just a story of incompetence here? Or at the worst cases, I think there needs to be some looking inside. Is there something here that was somewhat coordinated as to reasons why this vehicle was allowed to get through?
Yeah, well, the first thing is New Orleans, they have, since Katrina, has never recovered in terms of their police force. Like they are understaffed, they're underfunded. They have a really hard time keeping people employed with that police department. I mean, that's facts.
Sure.
Which is ironic because out of any town shy of, again, New York City, I can't think of a place where you need kind of the protect aspect of protecting and serve of law enforcement more than New Orleans, because of just the massive amount of tourism that goes on there. I mean, with the Superdome and with the French Quarter and Jazz Fest, they just have so many things. You've got Mardi Gras and Jazz. They have, I would hazard to guess, I don't know how many millions of people come in through that town annually. I mean, it's Allie and I's favorite place to visit. We love New Orleans. Yeah. We're down there all the time. And it gives you pause. It gives you pause. I mean, I don't want to say this to be insensitive, but I mean, we're there so much that you'd never catch us dead on Bourbon Street. That's for like the first timers or like tourists that are kind of hitting New Orleans for the very first time.
Sure. It's like Times Square, basically, where it's like, this is the tourist zone. Yeah.
You got to hit it. You got to get your hurricane at Pat O'Brien's. You got to do all the things that, you've always heard about New Orleans. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So like from that aspect of it, like, I don't know that it's incompetence as much as it really boils down to, they just got too comfortable. Yeah. They had gone a very, very long time without having any kind of with huge amounts of people coming in for all kinds of things, whether it be sporting events, whether it be music events, whether it be Mardi Gras, whether it be, I mean,
and that's exactly where we were at 9/11 as well.
Exactly.
We were too comfortable. And I feel like this it should be a wake up call of being too comfortable. Again, going back to those of us who've seen that in the last 25 years, I think we have gotten too comfortable. I mean, it was too heavy, then it was kind of okay, and now it's like, are we even paying attention anymore?
Right, we've slipped back into complacency a little bit, and and it's like we see it everywhere, though.
Yeah, completely.
You know what I mean? This is not a distinctly American problem.
No,
I mean, we're seeing these attacks.
Generational. This is how this works. Yeah,
exactly. So like the question with that 9/11 conversation is interesting, because with that, we're talking about essentially hijackers that were able to make their ways onto planes, with weapons of as crude as they were enough to get the job done, to get those planes under control. Like that is an easier solution to me, because you have an ability in airports to be able to say, all right, this is what we're going to do from now on. Like, I mean, in terms of passenger lists, we've always had that in terms of knowing who was flying. Yeah. But in terms of people being able to walk in willy-nilly to an airport, like you said, my kids know nothing but that. Yeah. Like you and I lived a very different life prior to 9/11. Yep. There was no security in the airport. Man.
I used to go hang out there in high school and watch the planes and like get the Burger King at the thing and just hang out, and like nobody cared. It was a totally different world at that point in time.
So, So for that, it was kind of an easier solution. Out of that was born TSA. And they're like, all right, everybody that walks through the doors of this airport and it has the intention of boarding a plane, we're going to check their bags and we're going to check their person to make sure they're not bringing anything on board. Easy. Because you have people contained in an area. Same kind of with sporting events. That was one of the things. Same things. You're not going to go into a sporting event that doesn't have metal detectors, that you're not getting a body scan, that you're walking in and they're doing face recognition these days. All those things are implemented. The question becomes, for a situation like parades or just places that are populated on a daily basis, there's never going to be a day once things get back to normal in New Orleans that there aren't tons of people walking around on Bourbon Street in the French Quarter, So what do you do? Do you gate it off now, and do you force people to pay an admission to get into the French Quarter in order to.
I don't think you need that. I think because like put basic bariers up, they didn't have.
But like if there's a will, there's a way.
There is.
You know what I'm saying? You can put up 3 concrete barriers.
Yeah.
And if this dude wanted to get through, he was getting through. Or he's not coming in off of Canal Street. You'd have to barrier the entire. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
we'd have to
a lot
blockade.
of places do that. Nashville does that. You go to where else am I thinking?
Yeah, but Nashville's still those same shitty metal barriers that like you could just plow through if you're in a F-250.
Yeah,
like I'm not seeing the concrete. You know what I'm saying?
It's also another area that also does have it blocked off. I mean, it's just not. We're talking about concrete, or there's some really basic things that really would be a simple solution.
They always do have Bourbon blocked off,
but they
I've been there. I've been to New Orleans.
I know, but the fact that somebody thought that night it was okay to just block it with a police car, that's the scary thing. And
I mean, to me, a police car's probably a little more sturdy than a blockade.
But
you know what I mean?
I don't know. I know.
I hear what you're saying. I just don't know what the fix is, man. I don't know.
I just think competence is the fix. Competence is going, this is a major event. There is no question these barriers need to be up by this time. We cannot have a temporary fix that night. This is a major night. And if we have to go get something in here to put up concrete barriers, then go and do that. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just a simple.
Every night is a major night on Bourbon Street.
But that is a major attention item. That's why it was done that night.
I don't know if it was
all the time.
I don't I haven't seen like pictures that showed me that there were any more people on Bourbon than there are on an average day.
But then just have it up, period. There should never, ever, any night of the year ever.
That's what I'm saying. We make it gated.
Exactly.
Now?
Period.
You
can get in and you can get out easily, but you have to kind of control a crowd because that's unfortunately where we're at. One more thing on this, and I know we've been talking about this now.
No, I think we could talk about this forever.
Yeah.
So wait, but before you jump on to the next thing.
No, I got one more thing on this too, but you go ahead.
All right. So I want to ask you if we have this situation where we've got to try to figure out preventative measures, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about having preventative measures in place at all times. Yeah. Because like we're always going to get complacent. Like if there's no attack for a decade, we're going to be like, oh, yeah.
And then we forget about why we have those measures in place.
Right, exactly.
They're not convenient.
Like I think the bigger question, this might be leading into what you're going to ask. How much of it is really going to boil down to government intrusion into our shit? Meaning Patriot Act type of invasion into our communications with one another, to where everything we're doing and saying, which it already is. It's all on the
already
grid.
There. That's the thing. Like all those things already exist, whether they.
Because did you read? I thought I read something that they were aware of this guy ahead of time. Now I don't know if somebody misspoke. I thought I heard something in one of the pressers right after it that they were aware that this dude was a threat. No, to my knowledge,
I did not hear that. It's no way to say that that's not out there. Then I just didn't see it. But this is, I mean, the most shocking thing to me on this is, did you see his real estate video where he's talking about? That's one of the crazy things about this to me. You know, you think of the 9/11 hijackers; they came from Saudi Arabia. They were radicalized over there.
This guy was born in Texas.
He was born in Texas. He was in the army. He served his country for a huge chunk of his life, and then somehow was radicalized to go and do this. I mean, that's the shocking thing. But I think, honestly, in the case of this guy, I'm almost thinking more mental break here than true radicalization, as we think of terrorists, I guess, as a whole or in general. This guy just does not seem to fit the profile of any of this other than a severe mental break. But that may just be it. I mean, and that's my other point here, is the lack of expertise in any of this stuff. Yeah, he flew an ISIS flag. Does that mean he's part of ISIS? No, it does not. It means he may sympathize with them, but that was my first question: is this truly an ISIS attack, or is this some nut job that somehow found semblance or some sort of community with ISIS? And as of now, I think that's maybe probably what we're looking at, probably encouraged wherever he was communicating with people. But this is just such a weird guy. And I'm wondering if the other guy is connected too, and just kind of, the community that we have now where things are unquestioned. You can go find, whenever he's having a mental break, let's go find community and make it a thing. I think that enables this sort of shit in different parts of the country. Which is maybe what we have going on here.
Yeah, no, I think there's no question about it. Because you get like a real Timothy McVeigh vibe from both of these dudes in the sense that they were both military guys, both Americans, domestic terrorism. And, you're trying to figure out why always.
Yeah.
And I happen to think that you hit the nail right on the head. I think without question, both of these guys were suffering from mental illness. I mean, you have to try to sit for 1 second, and it is so hard. And I'll tell you this, Tony, as a criminal defense attorney, to convince people that mental illness is actually a thing. Yeah. Because people that have never experienced it in their lives, whether it be personally or whether it be with a loved one or a close friend or what have you, just have a tendency to kind of think it's bullshit. Yeah. Which is so fucked up.
I know.
It's so fucked up.
I hear you.
Because but we're going to find out, and it's becoming more and more evident every day that passes. And I hate to tell you, man, this shit ain't helping. And I'm not talking about, and I'm holding up my phone for those of you listening on the pod, the devices. And I'm not saying it's like social media. What I'm saying is, I think we're literally our minds are being destroyed by waves and radiation. There's radiation constantly pumping out of these devices. Like when your phone is getting hot, it's literally radiation coming off your phone. Yeah. I just think that the mental illness is going to get worse and worse as we progress with everything turning into technology, as opposed to just kind of getting back to basics, bare bones, fire, food.
I think we're going to go back to that, because it's now the computers can think for us.
Well, and that's the thing, man. and that thing is my position on that. That is coming. It's here, and it's only going to get scarier in terms of what it's capable of doing. And, when it gets put in the wrong hands, it's going to be scary, man. And, but with these guys, you just have to wonder, is it PTSD? Now, I haven't done a deep dive into their backgrounds. I don't know if either of them were in combat, either in Afghanistan or anywhere in the Middle East where we've had conflict going. I don't know. That's an easier way to look and say, all right, well, clearly, these guys are trained to kill, and then they're put in a situation where they actually are going and killing. Yeah. People that just kind of look at it in a way that they're watching war movies and they're like, geez, that seems super scary, and not really kind of trying to put themselves in the shoes of somebody who is sent over into battle, and the horrors of that.
The one that was in the New Orleans driver, he was deployed to Afghanistan in 2009.
Yeah, that dude's got PTSD like a mofo.
If it was combat, I don't know though. We don't.
It doesn't out there. That wasn't a straight up Vietnam WW2 war. That was driving out peacekeeping missions, getting shot at, getting blown up, all the things that were going on with Afghanistan. It was a much different circumstance. Yeah. And a lot of those dudes are coming back jacked up in the head. And I'm sure I would be too. I'm sure that you would be too. You cannot be put in that situation where we're ripped from sitting in front of our computers talking about shit all the time to being thrust into the front lines of having your life literally flashing, before your eyes on a minute to minute basis, and or you're in a position where you're just gunning people down in order to preserve life. And that moving into such a part of your brain where you're desensitized to what you're doing, because we're all taught to believe that murder is criminal, that murder is evil, and it's like we're somehow justifying it because there's a fight about oil or religion or whatever the case may be. Why are you able to take that and compartmentalize it and say, okay, well, murder is really bad, it's criminal, gets you a life sentence in prison and or the death penalty if you commit it in society, but when we're going to pull you out, put you in a uniform, hand you a gun, and send you off to a foreign country, it's good to go. There's this strange kind of disconnect there that I think that for our veterans who I love so very much, I really do. I am always in awe of them, especially people that served in battle and war, who were in the shit, so to speak, and they come back because that sacrifice is unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Just
like the amount of sacrifice.
Last night, a nephew of my girlfriend that he's 19 and he's about to be deployed and about to find out where he's going. And just
oh my God, night. Dude, it's like like I love our country, and it's like I'd never want my kids to join the military because I know what it means. It's like that thing where you've got like you feel like you're potentially sending your kid off to a death sentence, So it's like you want to defend our country, and
thank God we have those people that are.
Oh, that's what I'm saying, dude. It's like I never see a veteran without thanking them. And if they're willing, I'll shake their hand. And I mean it. It's such a huge sacrifice.
1,000%.
Oh my God. And but the bigger thing is they're sacrificing their mental well-being. Yeah. So which brings us back to the point, like, I think when they dig in, because these guys had to have been sitting around, Tony, for days, weeks, months, thinking about doing this shit.
Oh yeah.
They're not sitting around like putting their Oculus on and like, I'm going to go kill zombies like me last night. They're sitting around in their basement, probably with like a fucking police scanner on, like just sitting there, like making homemade bombs and just like thinking about like killing people, like on a massive scale. And you're like, you just have to try to sit there and think about like, my God, like where has it gone wrong with that person to where like they've got like no kids, like there's no family. They're like, where is?
Well, and that's where it goes back to, I think, the lack of the expertise in all this. Like we're talking, there was fireworks in one of them. Like no one who's seriously trying to blow something up or has any understanding of reality is going to think going to Uncle Sam's fireworks and loading up on, the 4th of July shit is going to blow up a build. I mean,
it's amateur hour.
It's so the both of them were amateur hour. Number one, it was amateur because they could get through as easy as they did. Anyone could have done that if they wanted to. But then number two, he had all these other, IEDs, quote unquote, sitting around apparently, but none of them went off. He didn't have any real true plan of how he was going to do it or when. It was just complete chaos, even on that part. And that's where it feels like this is so much more of a mentally ill person who's somehow found themselves in that place in our country as being an American citizen. This is a different type of terrorist here, because this is not even ideological like Timothy McVeigh, where they sat there and this is how they see, this is their life. This seems like somebody went nuts and something snapped somewhere very quickly, and it went to amateur hour terrorist. And it's scary because we're starting to see more of this. How many other amateur hour terrorists are there going to be? And they can do a lot of damage really, really quick with amateur hours still.
Thousands and there are so many people. I say it all the time. Like I was 20 plus years in the criminal justice system, and I'm telling you that 90% of perpetrators were either suffering from mental illness and or addiction to either alcohol and drugs or both.
Sure.
Like this is not rocket science.
No.
And the problem with that is that the government's solution to this, prosecutors' solutions to this, is to stick people in prison, as opposed to, if we had as many treatment facilities as we did prisons, and we were trying to get people better, instead of just throwing them in a cage and letting them rot and letting them fester and then letting them come out 10, 15 years later.
So that's a whole other conversation.
It's a whole other thing.
I want to do a documentary on that, actually, about the whole the mental health system and the state facilities that all went to hell in the 80s. Yeah.
It all boils back to that, though. Yep. Like it's like this isn't a hard thing to figure out. Like what's gone wrong here. And if you're wondering if there's a shit ton of dudes sitting in their basement, just building up to this point where they're able to go out there and do what they're thinking about doing and probably have been thinking about doing for months or years. Yeah, there's a ton of them. Dude. Yeah, and like I don't know how you stop it. If it's the lone wolf guy who's not communicating with anybody.
It feels like the water is at the boiling point, and that's the scary part with this.
We're in dangerous times, man.
Welcome to the podcast. If you'd like to listen to an ad-free version of this episode and all of our episodes, then search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. That's our premium channel where all of our ad-free and advanced episodes live, all in one place. True Crime Today Premium Plus. Search it on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. Even try it for 3 days free.
Let's be honest. Nothing kills the thrill of a good murder mystery like a commercial for laundry detergent. It's like someone slapping a closed sign on your favorite dive bar. But you're not here for that, are you? You're here for the good stuff. So ditch the ads and upgrade to True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts. With True Crime Today Premium Plus, you get your crime straight. No chaser. Commercial free with extended interviews and early access. It's like getting the bartender's special when the bar's already closed. Search for True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe and drink it all in.